Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. And today's episode, we're talking about podcasting mistake a beginner should know and avoid. Once you get the hang of podcasting, it can be pretty easy. You can only have to worry about the podcast content and edit the whole thing. The process become relatively simple things to do. However, for beginners, just like you, it is a different story. There is so much technical and creative stuff that can go wrong. When you're podcasting beginner, mistakes are bound to happen, especially when you're doing everything by yourself. The good thing is we compile a list that might just help you have an idea of common podcasting beginner mistake. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about mistake a podcasting newbie should know and avoid. Let's get to the topic. So there is seven mistake for beginner podcaster. So the first one is not being specific. The number one mistake beginners should usually do while starting is having a generalized theme for the podcast generally. They tend to be not specific in terms of their topics, making the podcast channel disorganized. For example, for the first episode, you say decided to talk about fitness tips. And in the next episode, you went with politics. This topic don't really relate to each other and confuse your listener. Make them skip your podcast entirely. This also includes making a unique podcast, narrow down your podcast with topics that are different from everybody else. There are lots of podcasts out there. In order to succeed, you must stand out from this and offer a unique audio experience for your audience. Give them a reason why they should choose your podcast than other. Target these people and work on building their loyalty by making your podcast a unique one. Number two mistake, poor content quality. Similar to the first mistake, a lot of people skip the part of making sure their content is a good quality. Again, there are thousands of podcasts available right now. So good content quality is necessary for a podcast to stand out and be listened to. Saying some podcast gurus say content is king. If you are the listener or the audience, you wouldn't want to listen to an episode that poorly written with uninteresting topic, right? A lot of podcasts also seem to focus more on sound quality and ignore other aspect. Don't make this mistake. Make sure that the content you are delivering is also good. Make sure that all aspects are balanced. A good podcast content also includes making sure that the podcast is edited to perfection or at least edited well. Beginners usually don't bother to edit their podcasts, leaving dead airs, failing to edit out boring parts of the podcast. When you're doing this, the audience will surely be turned off from continuing to listen to your podcast. Make sure to insert effort in editing to show the audience that your podcast is worth their time. Number three, so it's number three, recording only one track. Another common mistake beginners do is recording only one track. During the editing phase, this mistake is greatly emphasized, especially when you have two or more people participating in the podcast. Several disturbing, annoying sound may be recorded. Your guests may suddenly cough, a phone ring, the most untimely point, a dog barking, an ambulance passing by. All these things make it difficult during editing when there's only one track. Having more recorded track ensure that audio levels are balanced and any background noise from you or the guest may be cut out. The next one, the next mistake, making the podcast too long. When you are just starting, it's easy to be excited and have a lots of idea for the podcast. Beginner usually have this great idea out of nowhere and proceed to record the podcast immediately. Skipping the planning part and script writing, when this happen, they usually end up talking so much about the topic, lasting for a few hours unless you're Joe Rogan. This will not only create a very long podcast episode, but also a podcast that disorganized without any cohesion. When you do this, you'll be overwhelming end up blubbing, and move to different points without the proper flow. Your listeners will not like this and avoid your podcast. Make sure to create a script beforehand or a list of talking points you'd like to cover. Make sure that your words are enough to make a great podcast for a certain topic. Keep in mind the target length of your episode. For 10-minute one, the word count is usually within 1,200 to 200, depending on your pace. The other mistake is the poor sound quality. As I mentioned a while ago, some beginner prioritize sound quality over content quality. Similarly, there are beginners who do the opposite side. They prioritize the content quality but ignoring the sound quality. Hey, you're on podcast, which means you should have a good quality sound quality. So poor sound quality can mean a lot of things. This include imbalance among the sound level of different hosts. For example, the main host may sound clear and strong, while other hosts may sound noticeable less firm and a little bit weaker. For the audience, this doesn't good. It's easily a podcast turn off. Make sure to avoid this by using editing software that allow you to balance all audio levels. Aside from the sound levels, poor sound quality may come from having a poor sound equipment. While you can definitely start a podcast without the best tools on the market, a lot of listeners actually expect a podcast that offer a good audio experience, especially if there's a lot of podcasts available already. For beginners, without a microphone yet, you might want to try removing background noise in your room, like turning off the fan, television, or air condition. You could also take advantage of phone mic while using your an earbud maybe or earplug. Where's my earplug? These are usually good enough already to mask out other noises. If you have the budget, you can go ahead and buy some pretty good sound equipment just like this. The sixth mistake is music copywriting. Another grave mistake beginner usually do is using a copyrighted music. It's a mistake that even expert podcaster commit since copyright can be a bit complicated, making it easy to miss. Yes, the fair use policy may tell you that it's okay to use a bit of the music for your podcast, but oftentimes they usually get disputed over some technical aspect. When this happens, you will likely to be fined or asked to pay some royalty fee from the original music owner. The podcast episode might also be taken down. Even worse, you can be taken to the court. With a recent AI detection software, podcasts within copyrighted music are easily detected with the mention of consequences. Avoid all this by using non-copyrighted music for your podcast episode. To help you, tons of music website offer free music like I like the Epidemic Sound or podcast.co. For Epidemic Sounds, there's a dedicated page solely for podcasting, so avoid this copywriting issue by making use of free music that is non-copyrighted. If you have the budget, you may even go ahead and hire a music producer to create your music intro and background to make your podcast even more unique with a great sound quality. The last mistake that beginners podcaster do is failing to market the podcast. Beginners also make this mistake of failing to exert effort on marketing the podcast or episode. What is the use of creating one with no one listen to you? At its core, a podcast isn't podcast without an audience. And an efficient way to gain and build an audience is through marketing and promotion. Simply make a podcast episode and release it on a podcast platform isn't enough. You also have to market the podcast for a wider reach. A lot of beginners quit just because they miss this crucial step, leaving their episodes with no downloads or listeners. Make sure to have a marketing plan just as much as you have with planning, writing, and editing. As a beginner, you could do a lot of things. This include making a newsletter or setting an ads. Facebook ads are a great way to start having paid ads for your podcast and brand. Similarly, you may also try out ads for other social media like Twitter or Instagram. Another great way to build an audience is through partnering with other podcasting artists, where they can be guests on your own episode. You can also be a guest for their episode. There are tons you can do with social media, so make sure to use them fully. Podcasting won't guarantee you overnight success. You will make mistakes as you make your way in the industry. But the good thing about mistakes is that you can learn from them and do something to improve, especially in the field of podcasting. With today's episode, you can avoid this mistake entirely. Try to avoid this mistake and do alternative or better ways to improve. Make sure to prioritize the quality of your podcast episode and build an audience rather than release too many half baked episodes. So that's it for today's episode. Do you have other must know mistake to avoid to help out those starting with podcasting? Let us know in the comments below. If you like this episode, leave a like and share it with your friends and family. Also, stay tuned for more podcasting tricks and tips in the future. Till next one, and thanks for watching. So just to let you know, I just released my first ebook for about podcasting. So if you want a free copy, just go to kangaroofirm.com/free book and see you in 2 weeks time. Bye.